Staying motivated and sticking to a particular plan or a diet or a meditation practice is probably the hardest thing you can do when you're looking to create major change in your life. Your brain tells you to do anything but that one thing that you've set your mind to. It tells you, going for a walk won't change anything. Or, you can have another piece of brownie. That's okay. Or, why don't you meditate tomorrow? You'll probably feel better then. Hell no. Truth be told, there is no such thing as tomorrow when you feel better, when you are in that river of change. The only way to get through it is to get through it. And that means that you stick to your plan, you make a commitment, and you just do it. My name is Stephanie, aka the Sticky Fairy, and I have been on a radical path of change for the last 5 years. And in this video, I would like to share that experience with you. I've healed from a number of mental and physical challenges, primarily through meditation, and more specifically through Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations and techniques. Just to be clear, I'm not a meditation teacher or a coach or anything like that. I'm just a regular person who got really tired of listening to doctors who told me that I could never heal because I was chronically ill. And then I started looking for answers and found something that resonated with me. And then I went for it. I threw everything at it. And it worked. It's still working. And it looked nothing like I would have imagined it to look. It's way better. And I want to share that journey with you. Some of you may already have seen my testimonial that was filmed at Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation event in Marco Island in 2022. Ever since then, I've received hundreds of comments and messages because I felt like I needed to clarify some things in the comment section of that video that I have linked to in the description below as well. But there were a lot of other things that I also wanted to share on that stage, and time was very limited. So that's why I'm doing this video today, so that I can perhaps help you to stay motivated and share some of the things that I did to stay on track when I was going through the hardest part of my own transformation. I'll also answer some of the questions that you've asked in my previous videos, and hopefully that'll help you on your way as well. Either way, the path of healing is beautiful. It will challenge you in ways that you never thought was possible. It might bring you to your knees. It might make you question everything you ever believed in before. It will open up lots of new, incredible opportunities. It will teach you to look at the smallest things in this world with unimaginable awe and gratitude. And you will most likely become a whole new person, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So now I'm going to tell you a few things about my background so that you understand where I'm coming from. I was practically born with severe eczema, every allergy under the sun, and asthma. And when I was a baby, the doctors wanted my mom to tie my hands to my bed to prevent me from scratching myself, which she obviously refused to do. And my entire childhood and early adulthood was very much affected by all these issues and me having all sorts of health problems that were labeled as chronic and non-curable by the doctors. I was also bullied from a very early age, and my parents went through a really difficult and long divorce that started when I was 16 years old. So there were a lot of issues going on and a lot of insecurity and a lot of feelings that I wasn't quite safe in my body or in my environment. And because of that, I think I subconsciously started to run away. I traveled a lot, traveled the world, went to amazing places, just searching for something that would make me feel better. Mind you, by this time, I had already tried everything. Every diet, every cream, every strange potion, energy medicine, like all sorts of things, and nothing worked. And the hardest part when I was trying all these things was that I would get really excited every time I found something that I thought had the potential to heal me. And I would get really excited and I would throw everything at it. And then I would get extremely disappointed when it didn't work and when I found myself exactly in the same situation. And so year after year, I grew a little more desperate, but also felt more resigned, sort of questioning if there really was something out there that could help me. And yet, there was just a little part of me, like that wisest part of me, that urged me to keep going. And I always followed that voice, luckily, because otherwise I wouldn't be here today. Now, the other problem that I had was that I never really knew what I wanted to become or what I wanted to do when I was older. I traveled a lot, but I was also fairly uncomfortable in myself because I lacked that clear purpose or a sense of direction. So in 2012, I moved from Finland, where I'm born and bred, to London and worked in 2 different marketing jobs for a year. I hated both of those jobs passionately. And so on the side, I started writing a cookbook with free from recipes because I had met an Ayurvedic doctor who told me that I could in fact heal myself and that there were a lot of imbalances in my body and that they could be cured through food and herbs and all sorts of things. So I was doing that on the side and I ended up self-publishing my cookbook in 3 languages. Never do that. And then I sort of built my own business as I went along. Finally, I ended up resigning from my job because I was so unhappy doing that, and I became a full-time entrepreneur at the beginning of 2013. And that's when the issues really started to get serious. And it was during that time that my addiction to scratching my skin started. I had no idea that this was going on. I just thought that I had itchy skin and that I was doing what anyone in my position would do, which is scratch myself. But I would go into a bathroom and I would scratch myself with my eyes closed for, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 minutes until my skin was bleeding. So that wasn't really normal anymore. Then fast forward a couple of years to 2017, I've spent a couple of years building that food business. I've built a recipe platform. I'm spending all my time creating recipes and cooking and making videos. And even if it's helpful, it's not helping myself. And my issues are getting worse. My skin is getting itchier. And I'm the worst advocate of my own business. And so I have a lot of shame around that, and I'm sort of starting to look for something else. So I team up with another entrepreneur in 2017, and we start a vegan chocolate company. Within a couple of months, we end up splitting up because of significant indifferences. And after a long, hard process, I end up taking over a company without any knowledge of chocolate, really. And that's when things really fall apart. The stress is so overwhelming in every area of my life. Physical, mental, financial, emotional, just that stress of having to be performing in every area, and it gets the best of me. So I stopped sleeping, and in 2018 I get a trauma diagnosis, by which time I am suffering from insomnia and also having suicidal thoughts because I'm covered in eczema from top to toe. There's barely any skin on my entire body that isn't covered with like dry flakes or blood, and I get freaked out. I have no idea what to do. And so half a year later, I'm at my deepest, darkest breaking point, and I decide to stop. I'm forced to stop. I spend a whole year, 2019, just trying to figure out something that could help me. I read about 100 books. I walk in the park. I take long baths because that's comfortable in the skin that I'm living with. And I just search the way I've always searched, but now with a desperation and sort of a panic because I know that I have to do something because nothing is working. At the end of that year, on the 26th of November, Dr. Joe Dispenza pops up in my YouTube feed, and I watched one of his videos. And after I watch it, I decide to start meditating. the next day, and I just have this sense of finally discovering something that will make a significant impact. And so I meditate every day starting that next day. I go on YouTube, I find one of his meditations that is free, and I just start. And then after that, I download all his meditations. I buy them all. I buy all his books. I buy all his programs online, and I just dive straight into it with this hunger to learn and to understand and to give myself some tools to manage myself and my mind better. So what does Dr. Joe tell people to do? Well, he tells you to meditate. It is as simple as that. But it's also important to learn why you meditate, what happens in the brain, what happens in the mind, what your thoughts and emotions do, how they affect your daily life, all of that. So I just do exactly what he tells people to do, and I get on with it. And the following 2 years between 2020 and 2021 are probably the hardest years of my life. Because, as you know, the pandemic is hitting the world. I've already isolated for a year in my own apartment because I'm in this river of change. But I am doing all the meditations and I'm doing everything that Dr. Joe tells you to do, and I see no change whatsoever. Nothing. I feel a little better and a little lighter because I can see that there are a lot of other people who have had significant changes in their lives and who have healed because I'm watching the testimonials, but I can't see any of it and especially not on my skin. So then there's an event in London announced, and it's supposed to be on my birthday at the end of March in 2020. I get super excited. I'm like, oh, this is meant to be. I am just in the right place at the right time. And then, of course, that gets postponed. Then a couple of months later, they announce an event in London in November 2020. I feel even more seen and heard and loved by the world and the universe because I live in London, and of course that gets postponed as well. But in hindsight, this is a really important point. I could have gone to an event if there hadn't been a pandemic, but if I had gone, the event and the experience would have been very hard because it took me literally a whole year to be able to sit in meditation with my hands in my lap without scratching my skin. I was so hyper at the beginning. I didn't sleep, and so I spent my days in this weird haze, half asleep, half awake. And so I think I really needed that one and a half, almost 2 years to spend it on my own, away from all distractions, just learning how to calm down my nervous system and doing it in the privacy of my own home, where I didn't feel judged and I didn't feel like somebody was watching me or like I was doing something wrong if I did end up scratching myself. So in hindsight, everything turned out perfectly, but I just couldn't see it at the time. Another really important part about this particular time was the fact that I was living alone and just focusing on my healing, but I was also consciously removing myself from all situations and all the people in my life who I thought that might have opinions on what I was doing. I've always been a bit of an oddball. I've done things, I've tried things, I've experimented in ways that people may not have done. And so I was just kind of sick of getting negative comments and getting questioned because of what I was doing and how I chose to live. So I just stopped talking about it, and for me that was the right way forward. Because fact of the matter was that it wasn't their skepticism that was going to heal me. It was my determination that was everything to me, and that got me to where I am today. And here's the thing. Because I had lived in a state of survival practically since birth, and because I had only ever known disease and discomfort and having this feeling of something being wrong. That was my normal, familiar state of being. It took a long time for me to start practicing what it felt like to feel good. At the beginning of 2019 and 2020, I really didn't have a lot to sort of be thankful about on the outside. My finances weren't great. My relationships weren't great. I was physically really, really sick. I wasn't sleeping, and there were a lot of issues around my body. Somehow I needed to push through and teach myself how to feel good, even despite the circumstances. And so that's what I did. And in the beginning, when Dr. Joe tells you to feel awe or inspiration or gratitude in the meditations, you might not be able to do that. For me, I just felt flat. I felt nothing. I practiced with thinking about puppies and flowers and family members and friends. Nothing worked. So do you want to know what finally worked? I found a picture of myself as a 5-year-old girl holding a toy bunny. And that picture is taken in the yard that I grew up in. When I saw that photo and remembered the way I felt having been really bullied by 2 other girls in that yard, I just felt such compassion for that girl and for the way she felt and for all the hardship and all the things that she would have to go through to get to where I, the older version of her, is right now. That memory was what helped me to open my heart, and then slowly but surely I started practicing the other feelings as well and the other emotions, and I just got better and better at feeling them. And at some point I didn't have to try anymore. It became a very natural part of my morning where I would just start every morning with a meditation. And then when that part came up where it was about feeling emotions, I was just excited because I got to do it again. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the day. Now I still have a lot of golden nuggets to share, and I want to talk about all the things that I did to stay in the game while I was going through my transformation. But for now, if you're liking this video, please hit the subscribe button down below. Thank you so much, and let's continue with the video. Now, in my testimonial, I share the story of how I healed before I went to an actual Dr. Joe Dispenza event. And that's exactly what happened. And the reason why I did that, why I created this new possibility in my mind, was that I knew that the pandemic was going to continue for probably a year. And I didn't want to keep getting disappointed because the external circumstances prevented me from having the experience that I had in my mind and experiencing the healing that I was craving so badly. So that's why I decided to just create an opportunity or something to be excited about on my own terms, regardless of what was going on in the world. Because let's face it, most of what we experience is the stories that we tell ourselves and the stuff that goes on inside the mind. And so you have the power over that in every moment of your life, and you can choose if you have a positive experience because of that or if it's a negative one. Change is never linear. It took me 18 months to see any kind of change. And that change wasn't even related to my skin, which is kind of ironic in my opinion. Instead, I started sleeping for the first time in my life. Now, this was a huge thing for me, and when it happened, it was truly mind-blowing. Because of all the experiences that I had as a child or from a very early age, I had never really slept that well. And as things got worse, I just slept less and less. When I woke up that first morning after I had slept for 8 hours, I felt like I was reborn. And I really knew that I was onto something. All the doubt that I had and all the questions I had about if it's working or not just sort of evaporated with that, because I was 100,000% sure that it was working. And then almost 2 years after I started meditating, in October 2021, I looked myself in the mirror one evening. Now, to be clear, up until this point, I had tried everything to stop thinking about the way I looked. I didn't really look myself in the mirror. I didn't have the lights on in the bathroom where there were a lot of mirrors. And I just tried to think about something else because it didn't help me to focus on the problem all the time. So I wore long-sleeved shirts just to feel good and feel comfortable without thinking about it too much. And so one night I am in my apartment and I look myself in the mirror like this, and my whole upper body is glowing. Like, it's healthy, it's glowing, it's whole, it's just perfect. And that's probably the first time in my life that I have glowing skin. Like, that is not a concept that has been in my vocabulary or even existed as an opportunity in my life before that moment. And, you know, I'm just thrilled, I'm excited, I don't know what to do with myself. It's like, can this really, really, really be it? And of course, I know that it's it. I'm so sure of it already, but it caught me completely off guard, and I think that's the coolest part about it. Now, here's the really cool part. 5 days later, I get an email from Dr. Joe's team offering early registration for a retreat in Marco Island that is going to take place 2 months later. How is that for synchronicity? Obviously, I got pre-registration because I had been registered for a couple of other events that were postponed. It kind of made sense, but the timing was pretty epic. It also blew my mind because I had been practicing this moment of me walking up on a stage and telling the story of how I had healed at home before coming to an event. And all of a sudden, I'm now at that point where there is an actual situation in the very near future where that could happen. And you know what happens next. I fly to Marco Island, I get up on stage, and I tell my story. Kind of the way I imagined, but not quite, which I'll get to in a moment. But for now, I'd like to answer some of your questions that you asked me in a previous video, so let's get to that. This was one of the most frequently asked questions in the testimonial that I gave at the Dr. Joe Dispenza event. I don't think there's a right answer for this, but for me, there really wasn't any one good meditation or right meditation for me. I had a couple of preferences because of the music that was in those meditations, or just because of a sensation that I got or something that resonated with me. I don't think that it's about the meditation. It is about how you get beyond yourself and how you forget who you are in that moment and just become pure consciousness. So whatever it is that gets you there is great. It doesn't even have to be a Dr. Joe meditation. I highly recommend them, but if you listen to a fan, or if you can sit by the ocean and listen to the sound of the waves or the sound of the wind, whatever that is, that's perfect for you. And so I think you just have to experiment a little and see what works for you. Stop clinging to what everybody else says and just do your own thing. Buy a couple of the meditations, just buy ones that you feel drawn to for whichever reason, and then just try them and see what happens. So I think Dr. Joe can explain this way better than I can, but my understanding is that meditation just calms down the nervous system, which is exactly what happened to me. I was so hyper that all these symptoms started to appear because the systems were just out of balance. So the more you meditate, the better you get at focusing your mind and not getting caught up in the drama of your life life or in the pain that you're experiencing or whatever that thing is that is difficult for you. You're essentially lowering the volume in your brain and you start to feel longer periods of peace. You find joy in new things and life just starts to become a little easier piece by piece by piece. At least that's my experience, and that's why I meditate. I meditate so that my mind doesn't complicate my life, basically. I also meditate because it makes me feel really good, and when I don't meditate, I feel the difference. Mind you, I've now gone 4.5 years meditating every single day since I started, and I don't think that's ever gonna change unless, something would happen. But to me, meditation is more important than brushing my teeth. It's just something that I would never want to go a day without. And that's a pretty cool thing, I think. Yes, go to an event. They're awesome. You have no idea what it's like to meditate with 1,800 people in the same room. It's just beautiful. Weird, but beautiful. And you also end up meeting incredible people. I felt very normal, which was a new experience for me because people are sort of into the same things and it feels really safe and really nice to talk about things that you might not be able to talk about with other people in your life. This is a question I get a lot. I wrote a 9-page letter on my way to Marco Island. I was on a long flight from London to Miami, and I spent the majority of that flight not sleeping, but writing. So first I wrote the letter on my computer, and then I transcribed it by hand onto real paper, because that felt important to me. And then I got to the event, and I told someone at registration that I had a story to tell, and tried to hand over the letter. They didn't accept it. And I was like, this is not the way it was supposed to happen in my mind, And so I was like, okay, whatever, maybe it wasn't meant to be. So I forgot about it. And so during one of the last days, I'm sitting there in the audience and a member of staff comes over and asks if I want to go up on stage to tell my story. Now, that caught me off guard. It happened when I least expected it in a way that I didn't expect at all. That's a really good question. So let's talk about beliefs for a moment. A belief is a thought that you keep thinking over and over and over again. In any given moment, you always have the ability to choose what you think about. Instead of thinking about, can universal energy heal me? You could think, wouldn't it be cool if universal energy healed me? I wonder what that would feel like. I wonder how surprised and filled with awe I would be if that were to happen. In fact, I wonder when it's gonna happen, and I wonder where I'm gonna be. You can always start to play around with a thought in the reverse way. The problem is that many of us have practiced thoughts for a very long time that might not be very loving or helpful in many different ways. I used to think about why I was so sick and how awful it felt and how awful I looked and how other people would respond to me and how what their experience would be when they saw me. And then I had to flip that, which is what I talk about in the testimonial as well. Like, I can choose what I think about. What if I thought every time when somebody looked at me and the old thought was, oh my God, I know that they're thinking about how horrible I look. What if they're thinking, my God, look at that woman. Like, look at her, she's glowing. There's always the option of this or that, right? And so when it comes to universal energy, there's always that possibility. There are endless possibilities in the universe. The only person who can change your belief around universal energy, having the ability to heal you or not, is you. How do you do that? By thinking thoughts that create that belief. So if you were to spend a significant amount of time every day practicing thoughts that support that idea of universal energy having healing properties, then you would probably well, not even probably, you would have to start seeing evidence of that as those thoughts turn into a belief. That's the law. Again, I think this comes down to belief and perseverance. The meditations work for people who just stick with it, regardless of how they feel or how much progress they see. They just decide to go for it and they do it. I usually talk about this particular thing using the analogy of a big iron wheel. And that iron wheel has been spinning in one direction your entire life. And it's very slow and it's very heavy and it just spins that way. And your thoughts and your emotions are what set that wheel in motion. Then you start meditating and you start observing your thoughts and your emotions and you become really aware of all the programs, that affect you. And for you to get this massive iron wheel to stop in its tracks, to then get it to spin the other way around, which is in the direction of healing and wholeness and feeling good and, releasing negative patterns and stuff that no longer serves you, that takes a lot of energy. Most of us just want to press a button, stop the wheel, press another button and make it turn the other way around. But it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. That goes against every law of physics and whatnot. I'm not very good at that stuff. But I'm smart enough to understand that it doesn't work like that. It's just a gradual, slow process where you change the trajectory of your life. And when you do that, it's gonna take a bit of time. First, you need to get things to stop and to change the direction of momentum. And then when you get to that point, you turn the wheel the other way around and slowly, you're gonna undo certain patterns, and that's when the real change starts. Yes, I do the breath. And I will say that the breath is easier to do once you've been to an event, because the teachings around it are very, very good at the event, and it's really interesting and helpful to see other people doing it. So that's definitely something that is great with being at an actual event. But I have had some crazy experiences with the breath, and I will have to talk about those in another video because it's a long story. But I will say that the breath has helped me to stop many allergic reactions that I've had. Dogs and dust and pollen, have affected me pretty intensely previously. And if I do the breath, I can stop that reaction pretty instantaneously. And I can also fall asleep if I have a reaction to something and find myself in a state of, survival, where my heart is racing and I'm not quite feeling balanced. And if I do the breath for 5, 10, 15 minutes, it's as if it really resets my body. It's just the most incredible tool and a superpower. So I highly recommend practicing it. I never really had to visualize where the energy centers are located because I can feel them. It feels like something is moving around in circles, something beautiful, something very comfortable, and I have a very vivid experience of that. So when I focus my awareness on a particular place in the body, that energy comes alive and starts moving. But if you can't feel it, if I told you to close your eyes in this moment and think about where your knee is, you would be able to focus your attention on that particular place where your knee is, even if you can't feel it and even if you can't see it. And so the same thing happens with the energy centers. Dr. Joe tells you exactly, specifically where they are located in the meditations, especially in Blessing of the Energy Centers. And if you just follow those instructions and listen to where that center is, just place your attention there and wait and see what happens. It might take a while for you to start feeling that energy. It's just part of the journey. If you don't feel it, you're not doing anything wrong. It might just mean that you are developing a sensitivity towards the energy in your own time, and whenever that process develops is when you're going to start feeling energy in a different way. So if you're meditating, you're doing it right. If you're doubting and worrying, you're not doing it wrong, but you're not helping yourself either. Mind you, everyone has the same experience at the beginning. The mind is freaking out. It's telling you to do something else. It's telling you that the meditations aren't working. It's telling you to stop because the brain doesn't like change. And so there's gonna be a significant amount of discomfort in anyone's life who gets into meditation, especially if you are in a tough spot where you're really ill, or you have something pressing that you're going through. It's probably not gonna be like peaches and cream and unicorns and stardust, unfortunately, but that's just the process. If you're sticking to it, if you're showing up for yourself every day and doing the meditations, you're doing it right. Like during my first 2 years, I had no larger than life experiences. I didn't have anything significant happened to me. I just sat down and meditated every day, sometimes twice, not because I was counting how many minutes I was meditating every day or trying to make sure that I was in the field for a certain period of time, but I meditated twice or 3 times when I felt like I was very much stuck in an old program that wasn't serving me. And so if I felt myself getting fearful or worried about whether or not I was doing things right, I would meditate. And then I would feel better afterwards. And if I could maintain that state of being throughout my day, I wouldn't meditate again. But if I felt like I was just in a constant state of agitation and worry, then I would meditate again. And so I think you have to learn to be really gentle with yourself, and again, just watch your thoughts, because your thoughts are going to have opinions about what you're doing, but you can change them. You can listen to a thought, think about the way it feels. Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? If it feels bad, choose another thought and practice thinking those thoughts incessantly. Like, make that your priority, and you will start to feel better, because thoughts create emotions and emotions create thoughts. But you have more power over your thoughts than you do over your emotions. So it's easier to start with the thoughts. Okay, and finally, I want to run through some of the practical things that I did to feel better and to stay motivated throughout my journey. First of all, I wrote a physical script, like my perfect scenario, my vision for the future, that I used as a script that I would practice every day. Second of all, I took a bath every day. I lay in the bathtub between 1 and 3 hours every single day for 2 years. And in the bath, I would practice that script over and over and over in my mind. I would feel the emotions. I would practice the way it would feel when I stepped onto that stage. I would just practice that script as if it were my life, as if I was the actress of my perfect movie. And that felt really empowering to me. 3, I meditated every day. As I mentioned, sometimes once, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, depending on what I felt like I needed. It was not a matter of hours and time, it was a matter of how I felt afterwards and how long I could sustain those feelings and that state. 4, I went for a long walk every day without headphones, without any technology or my phone, and I just practiced that script again as I was walking. It was kind of my own walking meditation, but I was also focusing on the beauty of the nature and just trying to find ways to feel better in a situation where, as I mentioned, there wasn't a lot to be very excited about. 5, I have read a lot of books. I read everything that Dr. Joe wrote. I watched all the videos, and I kept marinating myself in his work and in any other work that was similar, that just helped me stay focused and believe in another future. 6, I watched every single testimonial from all the previous Dr. Joe events. Some of them were my favorites and I would watch them daily, and I would just watch them to remind myself that change was possible and that it could happen in 1,000 different ways. 7. I wrote myself notes. I wrote down things that I learned in the books and things that kept me motivated and that encouraged me to keep going. I wrote thousands and thousands of notes, and at some point I started putting them out into a park nearby, and that's essentially how I became the Sticky Fairy, which you might not know anything about. But to date, I've sort of created a new future through this process that was never intentional. I wasn't planning on becoming a Sticky Fairy. I wasn't planning on going viral on TikTok and then on Instagram. I wasn't planning on pitching an exhibition that is now available in London Bridge train station. And I'm working on the coolest, most fun project that are all a result of me writing a few notes to myself when I was going through this period of change. So you never really know what might happen because you are where you are right now and where everything feels dark and difficult and impossible. Like, it's just a small fraction of your story, and there is so much beauty and light and incredible things that you will experience exactly because of it. And doing what I do now is the greatest privilege of my life. I have so much fun doing what I do, and life is essentially supposed to be fun. I don't think that we came here to suffer and to go through incredible hardship just to suffer. We came here to grow and to transform, and unfortunately the only way to do that is to go through things that push you and that teach you to think differently. It's so true what Dr. Joe says, that anyone who has had really, really difficult experiences will end up being thankful for them. And I couldn't agree more. I am incredibly grateful for everything that has happened to me, which actually happened for me. I just didn't know it at the time. With that, I hope that my story can inspire you too, and show you that there is so much potential in the situation you are in right now. And the only thing you have to do is keep meditating, keep following the instructions that Dr. Joe has laid out so beautifully, and just do the work. If you do that long enough, you will see change. It is inevitable, because you are creating your life with every thought and every emotion you think and feel. And so if you teach yourself to think really encouraging and lovely thoughts, then you will start to feel that way as well. And if you walk around feeling great, there is no other possibility than you having great experiences. Again, that's just the law. As for myself, there's still things that I'm working on, slowly chipping away, old patterns and old things that no longer serve me. I was practically born with all the health issues that I had as a baby. And so because of that, there's a lot of unprogramming that needs to be done. And I don't think that it would have been possible for all of that reprogramming to happen within a split second or within one meditation. The experience that some people have where they heal from something significant in a moment. But for me, those programs were so old and so rooted in my being that I think it was just part of the plan for me to experience that and for me to undo them. And that's still what I'm working on. And that's where the real gold is. So I'm a real gold digger these days because the more I dig, the more I find, and the better it gets. And that's just something that you have to experience, that you get to experience. And it's beautiful and it's fun and it's surprising in so many ways, and it still kicks my ass some days, but I know that I'm on the right path and I feel so loved and so held and so seen. I know I've learned how to trust that. I trust it more than anything in this world, And because of that, it also works for me because it's a very cemented belief by now. I've practiced it for years and years and years. And because I believe in it, I can see it. Most people want it to be the other way around. They say that they will believe it when they see it. But that's not how it works. You have to believe in it in order to see it. So believe in it. Play with it as a possibility. Wouldn't it be great if ... What is that opportunity that you're creating for yourself? What does that feel like? Just play with it, have fun with it. Life is supposed to be fun. I cannot say that enough. I had forgotten how to have fun. I didn't know what that was for me anymore. And that's all I practice these days. What can I do to have fun today? It's a good thing to do. That was a long video. I applaud you if you made it this far. Thank you so much for watching. And please hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already. I will see you in another video. I would also love it if you shared some of your own experiences in the comment section. Let's give people a big dose of inspiration and practical tips that they can use when they need it the most. So if you want to contribute to that, please just leave a comment below. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.